Hi guys, this is probably going to be a slightly longer video than usual because I'll be going over 3 trades and my honest reflection on where I've been in my trading journey, and just kind of like an update as well based on these 3 trades, sort of my thoughts and everything, and yeah, just reflections on how I feel about my current progress. So let's get straight into it. I'll have 1 on NQ and 2 on EU. Okay, yeah, actually let's just use this chart. So basically on NQ, this was a trade on Wednesday, 26th of February. You can see that price was pretty much just bearish for the whole week. Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and then this is Wednesday. So after that, I kind of don't really want to just blindly be shorting because price is already down so much. At the same time, I also don't really want to be longing in this kind of market. So I just daily, there's nothing much for me personally because I don't want to aim too low but also not too high. You can see that on Wednesday there's nothing here, there's no fair value gaps here, nothing for this bit of the range on the H4. But on the H4 you can see that there's a bullish fair value gap here, so price is starting to retrace a little bit, but this is still just a very small range and there's no change in the sales structure or market structure shift or anything. So this H4 is pretty much just a fair value gap that I think price might bounce off of. But other than that, it's not much. So just keep that in mind. Then moving down to the H1, we see that pretty much the whole day we just slowly grinded up, and then we were in this H1 fair value gap for a really long time. So since it was pretty much chopping in there, it means that it's not manipulating in there, it's just accumulating in there. So when accumulation is inside this fair value gap, I don't really want to trade off of it, meaning I don't want to short off of this fair value gap, which is why on Wednesday I wasn't looking for any shorts unless we went into this inverse fair value gap, because I don't want to trade off of this, because like I said, this fair value gap has not created anything so far, it's just been chopping inside it. So that's why I wasn't looking for shorts yet until we went there, or until we form an SMT, which we didn't. So that's that. Then 9 a.m. started and we went down and we swept this. So keep in mind, this was that H4 fair value gap, right? So what happened was price went down, swept this low, and this is also the Asian session low. So price went down in New York, swept Asian session low, and then respecting that H4 fair value gap. So I went to the 3 minute to look at what price was doing. I also wasn't really looking for a long, but I just got presented one. So we got here, this is the 3 minute. So we swept liquidity, had an SMT right here, bullish SMT, H4 fair value gap here, and I wanted to target that H1 inverse fair value gap because I think price would go back into that before going down. So what we got was this. And also because look, there's not really any manipulation yet, and there's also no SMT here, so that's why I don't think price wanted to keep going down. And then what we got was after 9:30 we went down at first, went to go into to sweep that Asian session low and to go into the H4 fair value gap, and then we had a market structure shift. We had a change in the sale of delivery here with this candle close above these 3 downward candles, but I wasn't too sure yet because I wasn't really looking for longs. Because like I said, retracement is probably more risky right now because market is so clearly bearish. So I don't really want to be, in any longs yet. I want to be like a really, really, really A+ entry. So we had this initial change in the state of delivery and we created a 3 minute fair value gap, but I haven't entered yet. Then I see price go down into that 3 minute fair value gap and I see it respect. That's when I think, okay, maybe I will start looking for longs. And then when this candle closed above these 2 downward candles, creating this change in the state of delivery, that's when I entered. So this is a pretty A+ entry because we got literally everything. So that's why I had my stop loss below this fair value gap, because price already went into the fair value gap. So there's no reason for price to go back into that fair value gap. So this was my 1 to 2 trade, targeting the inverse, change in the state, and 3 minute fair value gap. So that ended up being a win. But the thing is, with my execution, I actually pretty much as soon as we went up a little bit, I put my stop loss to break even. So you can see here price went down and tapped my stop loss. So it was a break even trade. But the main reason why I put my stop loss to break even was just because I wasn't that confident in the trade idea. And because at that time I didn't even know that the low that we swept was Asian session low, so I didn't know it was a very significant low. I just know that we swept a low, but I didn't know it was Asian session low. So that's why I was kind of like not very sure. And I think I was also like kind of on my phone, so not very like focused. So we'll talk more about that, but this is just pretty bad execution. Like there's just no reason for me to be putting my stop loss at break even so early. And so yeah, that's that. But that's basically the trade. And basically another reason was because we have this 15-minute fair value gap here as well that I thought price might want to go into. But again, like you can't, like if you want to put on a trade, like you should just accept the risk. There's no reason for me to be moving things around when it's not really part of my rules to do so. And it's kind of just based on the fact that I don't want to lose. And also based on the fact that I lacked conviction. But basically that was that. This short I didn't actually take, but you can see that this was basically my initial plan, I guess, because my initial plan was to wait for price to go into this inverse and then wait for a 3-minute fair value gap. But I wouldn't go into that because I didn't actually end up taking the trade because it was too late and I was already asleep. So that's the NQ trade. Now moving on to Euro on Thursday. You can see on Thursday, again, daily and 4 hour, there's not much things to look at here. This is Thursday. So Wednesday, we swept previous day high, went down, so not much. And then 4 hour, there was also not much as well. So I can get rid of this. But we did have SMT with previous day low here. So that's why I was a little bit bullish and looking for a retracement here. We had SMT with previous day low. And then on H1, I wanted to wait for this fair value gap to get tapped into. So that's why I didn't actually end up catching this trade. This was a fully missed trade. So there was a fair value gap created here at the 2 a.m. candle. So at 3 a.m. I was waiting for price to go into it, but it never ended up going into the fair value gap because on the 30-minute, you can see that price already had a change in the state of delivery here. So price had a change in the state of delivery and then price just went into the order block. And then also we have a 30-minute inverse fair value gap that price went into and respected. So there was not really much need to go back into that H1 fair value gap. Yeah, that was my bad because I also like wasn't really paying too much attention because I was on a call and like had a bunch of things. We had change in the state of delivery and then 5-minute fair value gap. So tap into fair value gap entry 1 to 2 that would have hit before the SMT. So that could have been a trade, but I didn't end up catching that one. Moving on, going back to the H1, again, there's nothing on the H4 that I see. So moving back to the H1, we can see that price is pretty much like bearish now because we already closed below this low. So it is also like change in the state of delivery. So this current range is bearish. And this move up is just a retracement into this fair value gap, right? That was also a reason why I think price wanted to retrace because there's a fair value gap here. So when price went into the fair value gap, you can see it was respecting. And then so what happened was we respected it and then we went down. We created this SMT with GU. So I went down to the 5-minute. We have this fair value gap here. So I entered around there, which was honestly very late. But the reason why I entered there was just because I didn't end up seeing it here. But if my ideal would have been something like this, which would have lost anyways, but yeah, that would have been something like my ideal trade. But anyways, the reason why this lost was because we ended up taking this high at news and then we created an SMT with GU because GU never ended up taking that high. So that was not a bad trade. I think this is just a normal loss. But what happened was after this trade, I actually like re-entered this trade just because I was kind of annoyed that I lost because I just knew price wanted to go down. Like I can see this liquidity, I can see the whole narrative, I see the SMT, the H1 fair value gap, I see that we're in a bearish range. So I knew that price was ready to go down. It was just an unlucky trade. And then after I re-entered, I realized like the reason why I re-entered was because I was annoyed at the loss. So then I took myself out at a slight loss again. Yeah, which if I just kept the re-entry, I would have made money, but that's not good habits. So I don't want to be part of that, because price can also just go up if it wants to, because H4 and daily, I don't have a very strong bias on that yet. So that's why I wasn't like sure about it, so I didn't keep the re-entry, because that was just purely bad habits. The re-entry was not really based off of like technicals, it was more based off of like annoyance at a loss. So yeah, anyways, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about my psychology and like my current issue, I guess. I think my current issue is mainly just execution and lack of focus and consistency, because like a lot of the lack of consistency and lack of focus has led to like missed trades here, missed trades on Monday, on Friday, and all of this, by the way, is not like, it's not hindsight trades. It's like price would be like literally like, I mean it is kind of hindsight, but price would be literally like here, and then like maybe like here, and then I'll be missing it by like 10-15 minutes, and then I'll be like, oh. And then all of this is like a narrative and plans that I've already had beforehand, but I just didn't really get to execute out the narrative and the plan because I didn't see it happen. So yeah, this is mainly like the issue right now, and that's just because like I think I've gotten kind of like complacent. So that's something that I need to deal with in terms of that, just setting strict rules regarding like during my trading sessions, I'm not allowed to scroll on my phone anymore, because there was one time, like I said, like here, or this one, the reason why I got out and set this to break even was literally just because I wasn't focused. So I didn't fully understand my confluences, so I lack conviction, because when you don't understand your thesis behind a trade, how can you have confidence in the trade, right? So that's why it's important to focus and to really understand why you're in the trade, and to really understand the narrative and your plan going into the day. Something that I realized was I'm very familiar now with my strategy. I know exactly what I'm looking for when I go into the day, and I have plans and I know how to make plans going into the day, but sometimes sometimes it's just not very aware of my plan. And your plan is different from your strategy, because your strategy never changes, but your plan can be slightly different. Some days you go into it with retracement trades. Some days you look for continuation trades. Like this is retracement. Like this was a continuation. This is a retracement. This was a continuation. Like there's always different things, but they're all still the same strategy. They're all still the same things that I'm looking for. The same entry models, the same higher time frame things that I'm looking for, but it's just different plans. And sometimes if I'm not focused, I end up not knowing what my plan is, and I end up thinking like, oh, like what if this doesn't work out, because sometimes I'm in a continuation mindset when I'm in a retracement trade or something like that. Sometimes like you just have to be sure. So that's the first thing that I need to work on. And second thing was, the reason why I moved this to break even, I realized, was because I wasn't really accepting risk. And I realized that when I got hit here, because when I lost this trade, I just got so annoyed. And that's when I realized like, oh, there are sometimes when I still feel annoyed about a loss, and there are sometimes when I still look at the outcome of a trade, because to be honest, I think I have improved a lot on that. Recently, I don't really care that much whether I win or lose. It's more about the execution, it's more about the plan. But sometimes that still happens. So it's important to realize that and to call myself out when that happens. Like especially this one, that's why I stopped myself out in that re-entry, because you have to call yourself out, because that will help you to prevent things like this happening, prevent you moving your stop loss, moving your take profit, or doing things that are not in alignment with your plan out of fear or out of greed. So yeah, I realized like execution is also a really important part of trading, like not just psychology and the technicals, but also the execution itself, knowing when to move your stop loss and take profit, knowing when to enter, knowing when to take a trade and when not to take a trade. stuff like that. The way that for me I can improve my execution is just to position myself in a way where execution becomes easy, and that is by understanding that I need to be building good habits, because the more good habits you have, the easier execution becomes. When you have bad habits like this, re-entering, and you let yourself off thinking like, oh, if I re-enter here it's fine because I'll win, and you start caring more about the outcomes than about building good habits, then that's when execution becomes harder, because you keep building bad habits for yourself, and every time you execute it's different, and every time you execute you lack consistency because you don't know what you're supposed to do. You don't know whether you should move your stop loss or not. You don't know whether you should re-enter or not. You don't know what your rules are around taking profit or having partial take profits or re-entering. There are certain times when I'm allowed to re-enter, but times like this it's not, because price hasn't even created another fair value gap yet. I just got stopped out and then re-entered straight away. That is not really a good re-entry. But if I got stopped out and then price created another 5-minute fair value gap where I can enter and have a good risk to reward, then in that case re-entry is possible. So that is like the different nuances that you have to figure out in terms of your execution. But execution, I think, in my opinion, only becomes easy when you have the correct mindset and when you have the correct values. When you really value respecting your system, that's when execution becomes easy. Because for me, I feel like a lot of the times when execution is easy, when I just enter and have a set take profit, set stop loss, I don't have any stress, is when I just fully let myself be okay with losing and be okay with winning. When winning doesn't really make me any, like, it doesn't bring me any euphoria, I don't really get a dopamine hit out of it, that's when execution is easy. Like this one, Wednesday trade, I went into it, set a take profit and stop loss, and I literally forgot about the trade until I checked my MT5 that night, and I was like, oh, I made some money here. And that is when execution was really, really easy, because I just didn't really care whether I win or lose. So yeah, and sometimes it's like when I have like missed trades like this, because I missed this one, sometimes that puts me in a mood where I'm like, oh, I need to win this one, or I need to make this money back, or something like that. So you have to look at your different moods and figure out at what times are you more vulnerable, and how can you put you back into a position where you can execute well. Because for this, I was in a good mood on Wednesday, because I knew that on Tuesday I had no setup and I didn't take any trades. So that's why I was in a good mood, because I followed my rules on Tuesday. So on Wednesday I was in a good mood. I was feeling good about trading, so execution was easy. But for this, I missed the trade, and I saw a good opportunity on New York, so it was like I expected to win. And when I have that expectations, then when the expectation doesn't get fulfilled, like this, when I lose, that's when you start to have problems of like, oh, I want to re-enter because I didn't get my expectations. My expectations weren't met. But if you go into a trade without expectations, you just do your plan, you execute, you do what you're supposed to do, then problems like that wouldn't come. You wouldn't want to re-enter. So yeah, there's quite a lot there to unpack, but yeah, what I realized is recently I have to focus a lot more on execution and just more on being present in the trade. Other than that, I think I'm slowly becoming better in other areas. So yeah, if you guys like this video, then remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.